Chapter 2047. Hearing Yu Manlin's words, Lan Qingyan didn't seem to care. Because of what happened back then, grandfather has always been dissatisfied, so it's not strange for him to have such a reaction. Even if father can't become the head of the Lan family, isn't there still me? Your bodies are tainted, but it has nothing to do with the young and ignorant me back then. All along, her father had wanted to become the head of the Lan family. But grandfather was also a stubborn person and was unwilling to give up his position all these years. However, whether or not Lan Jingquang could become the head of the Lan family, she didn't care. As long as she was the future head of the Lan family, that was enough. Seeing Lan Qingyan's indifferent appearance, Yu Manlong couldn't help but frown. Yin, no matter what, he's still your father. Why are you so unconcerned about your father's matters? Yu Manlong felt helpless. Perhaps she had spoiled Lan Qingyan since she was young, but she only thought of herself and didn't care about anything else. What does this matter have to do with me? Lan Qingyan asked back. You should ask father why he couldn't compare to Lan Yunxiao back then. A prisoner can make grandfather so concerned. This is because father is not capable enough. Hearing this, Yu Manlong fell into silence. No matter what, Lan Qingyan couldn't understand what happened back then. Lan Jingquang was also a heroic figure, but since he was born, why was he born? Lan Yunxiao was a genius that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. Wherever he appeared, everyone's brilliance would be overshadowed. If Lan Jingquang wasn't born in the Lan family, but in another family, then he would have already gotten everything he deserved. How difficult was it to get everyone to support a single person in such a large cultivation family? However, Lan Yunxiao was able to do it. This was a situation that ordinary people couldn't imagine. It was because she had personally witnessed Lan Yunxiao's strength, that even though he was a prisoner, as long as he didn't die, she would feel uneasy. Fortunately this time, her mortal enemy was finally gone. In the future, she didn't need to worry about Lan Yunxiao's appearance anymore. Seeing Yu Manlong fall into silence, Lan Qingyan thought that Yu Manlong was unhappy because of what she said, so she continued. Mother, if we leave now, the Yu clan might not be happy, but they can understand. Moreover, with our position in the Lan clan, we would be of great help to the Yu clan. They wouldn't ignore us just because of this. How dangerous would it be to stay in the Yu clan? So many young disciples have already died. If we lose our lives just because we don't want to offend the Yu clan, that would be really not worth it. Following Lan Qingyan's words, Yu Manling's heart felt a little better. You're right. The most important thing now is to stay alive. She didn't know what kind of powerful opponent the Yu clan had offended this time. The situation was actually so serious that it made people terrified. The Yu clan master stood in front of Yu Siqing. Yu Siqing's medical skills had always been the best in the Yu clan. Siqing, do you know how to deal with this poison? In just a few days, the Yu clan's clan master seemed to have aged quite a bit. One by one his juniors died. He was really mentally and physically exhausted. Chapter 2048. Following Yu Siqing's words, the Yu clan leader's expression turned extremely ugly. He knew best how powerful Yu Siqing's medical and poison skills were. Sometimes, he would send Yu Siqing to deal with people he couldn't deal with openly. Most of the time, his opponents would lose their lives without knowing what happened. But now, Yu Siqing was telling him that the other party's poison skills weren't any weaker than his? When did their Yu clan provoke such a terrifying opponent? As I said earlier, there were other substances during the explosion, but many people still absorbed them into their bodies. Yu Siqing's expression darkened. Her perception was extremely sharp. Although she couldn't determine it before, she felt that something was wrong. Thus, she immediately warned the clan members. However, many people didn't take her words to heart and thought it wasn't a big deal. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, the Yu clan's clan head's face turned even uglier. He remembered that Yu Siqing had indeed mentioned it before. But after the Martial Skills Hall and Ancestral Hall were blown up, he didn't have the mood to care about it. His mind was already calculating the losses. Because of this, he forgot to warn the younger generation. Speaking of which, he was partly responsible for the current situation. I believe that I can neutralize this poison, but I need some time, Yu Siqing said slowly. She didn't feel good that the Yu clan had suffered such a great loss. The Yu clan head looked deeply at Wuxia, then patted Wuxia's shoulder and said, "Everything depends on you." Bailey Hongzhuang was analyzing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's blood in the chaos ring to understand the composition of the poison. After more than 10 years of imprisonment, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had completely turned into poison people. As long as their blood dripped on plants, the plants would instantly wither and turn black. Just from this little change, one could see how terrifying the poison they were suffering from was. Bailey Hongzhuang covered the two with a blanket. They hadn't had a good rest in a long time. They hadn't had this kind of relaxation for more than 10 years. Thus, they slept for an extremely long time this time. Normally, whenever Wuxia was unhappy, she would torture them at any time. Therefore, there was never a time for them to relax. Bailey Hongzhuang found that not only were their physical injuries very serious, but their mental strength was also extremely exhausted. It would definitely take a period of time for them to gradually recover. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the sleeping Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's faces. She discovered that Lan Yunxiao was truly very handsome. In the past, she had heard that Lan Yunxiao was a peerless talent who swept away thousands of young girls. Now that she had seen him in person, his handsomeness hadn't disappeared even after so many years of torment. Not only that, Mu Lingbing was also a true beauty. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at herself in the mirror and could see the similarities between herself, Mu Lingbing, and Lan Yunxiao. However, even though the two of them were sleeping soundly, their brows were tightly knitted together, as if they were in great pain. Bailey Hongzhuang smoothed their brows and only hoped that the pain would be far away from them in the future. The three beasties silently watched Bailey Hongzhuang do all this with a myriad of emotions in their hearts. During this process, Bewitching and Situ Yen successfully arrived at Tiangang sect. Chapter 2049. The Return of the Sect Master. And the young sect master naturally attracted the attention of all the disciples of the Tiangang sect. After Xia Jiqing and the others learned that Bewitching had returned, their faces were filled with surprise. A few days ago, Bailey Hongzhuang had left with Bewitching. They didn't know where Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had gone. They only thought that the two had gone to other places to gain experience. Xia Jiqing and Bailey Hongzhuang had been good sisters for so many years. There had been no news of Bailey Hongzhuang, so she was very worried. However, this time she only saw Bewitching come back and did not see Bailey Hongzhuang. She also felt very strange. "Junyu, what do you think Hongzhuang did? Why hasn't she come back for so long?" Xia Jiqing frowned. Since the end of the assessment competition, Bailey Hongzhuang had been with Bewitching. However, this time Hongzhuang did not come back with Bewitching. Did something happen? Bai Junyu's face also showed a touch of doubt. "I see that the sect master and the young sect master's expressions are very serious. I don't know what happened. Let's wait first, we will know eventually." With Bai Junyu's voice falling, Xia Jiqing was even more worried. Could something have happened to Hongzhuang? Right now they were already in the world of cultivation, and there were many experts. This was a place where anything could happen. Bai Junyu quickly shook his head. "Don't think about it, Hongzhuang will be fine." When Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were worried, Dongfang Yu and the others in the other halls were also worried. They still remembered that the last time Bailey Hongzhuang separated from them was because she went to the blood abyss with Bewitching to cultivate. This time, they did not ask, but they also felt that they might go to the same place. Now that the sect master and the young sect master had come back together, the atmosphere was really unusual. However, even if they were very worried, they could only wait for news in this situation. If something really happened to Bailey Hongzhuang, then the most anxious person would be Bewitching. On the contrary, they could only stay here and worry, but they couldn't do anything to help. After arriving at Situ Yan's palace, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching moved Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing out of the chaos ring. The three beasts also followed closely. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were still asleep without any signs of waking up. Situ Yan's gaze was fixed on Mu Lingbing's face. After so many years, this was the first time he had seen his daughter. Looking at the face that was extremely similar to Mu Jinsei's, His gaze constantly changed as ripples appeared in his heart. His daughter was already so old, and had suffered for so many years, but he had always thought that it was someone else. Thinking of this, he really hated that he couldn't punish himself. If Jinsei knew about this, she would definitely hate him. From Mu Lingbing's pale face, he could vaguely see some similarities with himself. He firmly believed that this was his daughter. Situ Yan's calm and natural face could not hide his excitement. After searching for so many years, he had not received any news. But now he saw his daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter. The heavens had treated him well. Chapter 2050. Hong Zhuang, why are uncle and auntie still unconscious? Di Bei-chun looked at Lan Yunxiao, and Lan Yu, who didn't show any signs of waking up. His face couldn't help but be filled with worry. He'd already heard from Hong Zhuang that the two of them were unconscious. It had been several days since they'd rushed back, but they were still unconscious. Following Di Bei-chun's question, Si Tian's gaze also turned to Bailey Hong Zhuang with worry and nervousness. Hong Zhuang, will they be all right? They haven't had a good rest in a long time, so it's normal for them to sleep for a long time. Because they've exhausted too much of their mental strength, I'm afraid they won't be able to wake up for a while. However, I've been paying attention to their condition, so there shouldn't be any problems. Si Tuyan and Di Bei-chun finally relaxed when they heard Bailey Hong Zhuang's words. Everyone knew that the best way to recover mental strength was to rest. During this period of rest, mental strength would unknowingly recover. Based on Lan Yunxiao and his wife's situation these past few years, this was a normal occurrence. Hong Zhuang, how are your parents? Si Tian asked with a frown. They looked too haggard. Bailey Hong Zhuang had already changed Mu Lingbing's clothes, but the scars on her exposed skin were still visible. They've been tortured by Yu Siqing all these years, so they're both physically and mentally exhausted. Moreover, Yu Siqing used them as test subjects for her poison techniques, so the accumulation of poison in their bodies is extremely shocking. That's why they're so haggard. It won't be easy to treat them. Bailey Hong Zhuang's voice was heavy. Si Tian's current emotions were probably the same as hers. As soon as he said that, Situ Yan's hands clenched into fists. His eyes, which had always been kind and gentle, were already burning with anger. That despicable woman is actually so overbearing. Si Tuyan's eyes were spewing flames, and he looked like he couldn't wait to tear Yu Siqing to shreds. When he thought about how Yu Siqing had been flaunting her prowess in front of him all these years, he felt even more angry and ashamed. As it turns out, all these years, Yu Siqing had been tormenting his daughter, and he was completely unaware of it. He thought that Yu Siqing would know about Mu Jinsei's whereabouts, so he had kept Yu Siqing alive all these years. However, it was precisely because of his actions that his daughter and son-in-law were subjected to such torture. Grandfather, once father and mother recover, I will definitely use Yu Siqing's method to make her feel all the pain. Killing her would be letting her off too easily. Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes were also burning with anger and hatred. She had the same feelings as Si Tian. After hearing Bailey Hong Zhuang's words, Si Tian nodded. Just as Bailey Hong Zhuang said, now is not the time to take Yu Siqing's life. At the very least, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao had to witness this scene with their own eyes. Only then would they be able to vent their years of resentment. Then can uncle and auntie's poison be cured? Di Bei-chun furrowed his beautiful brows. His deep and kind voice was filled with worry. He knew how outstanding Hong Zhuang's medical skills were. Hong Zhuang had never worried about her medical skills when she encountered any problems. However, this time, Hong Zhuang said that it would be difficult to cure them. Just from this point, he could tell how serious the situation was. Chapter 2051. This was a battle between Bailey Hong Zhuang and Yu Siqing. Bailey Hong Zhuang was working hard on how to detoxify Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. Similarly, Yu Siqing was working hard on how to save the poison cultivators of the Yu clan. Both of them were researching nonstop. Yu Siqing's situation was the most urgent because every bit of time she spent, a few cultivators of the Yu clan would die. In a short period of time, the Yu clan was already in a miserable state. Naturally, the Yu clan's situation could not be covered up. After the cultivators of Yutian City understood the situation, they did not dare to stay here for long. After all, no one knew when this infectious disease would spread to them. Mo Yunjue originally wanted to lead the people to finish this show. However, after this incident, they did not need to continue the show, and directly left Yutian City. For so many years, Yutian City had never been so depressed. When Mo Yunjue knew what Bailey Hongzhuang had done, his eyes were filled with amazement. Every time Hongzhuang made a move, she could give people a sense of amazement and admiration. When he was in the Qing dynasty, Mo Yunjue had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's methods. However, this time Bailey Hongzhuang's methods had improved a lot compared to the last time. The only similarity was that whether it was the last time or this time, Mo Yunjue felt that the other party deserved it. Especially for a sanctimonious family like the Yu clan, they should be dampened like this. After the cultivators of Shitian Tower knew about this terrible storm, their hearts were full of shock and admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang. With such methods, if anyone offended Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be a huge disaster. However, in an organization like Shitian Tower, no one was afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. On the contrary, they only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was too suitable to be their young mistress. In this way, who would dare to offend the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion? That would be courting death. Bailey Hongzhuang worked tirelessly to develop a detoxification method, and her research also made some progress. At the very least, she already knew about 2 of the poisons and the antidote. However, she had to carefully consider whether or not the other poisons in Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies would be affected by these 2 poisons before she truly detoxified them. This was because all the toxins in their bodies had combined to form a strange balance. If he were to recklessly detoxify the poison, it would really affect the whole situation. This was the most difficult part of detoxification. Situ Yen could not help Bailey Hongzhuang with the detoxification, so he could only bring the precious heaven and earth treasures. As long as they could cure Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, they would not hesitate to pay any price. Bewitching sent the news that they had completed their mission back to Wuji Palace, but they could not personally tell Wuji Palace's palace master and palace master's wife. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang was guarding Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao. Suddenly, a commotion attracted Bailey Hongzhuang's attention. Mu Lingbing felt that she hadn't felt this comfortable in a long time. Even though her body still ached, it was better than it usually was. Chapter 2052. Amidst this comfortable feeling, Mu Lingbing had a vague feeling that she was already dead. If that wasn't the case, how could she have ever felt so comfortable in all these years? As her memories slowly returned, Mu Lingbing recalled how her daughter had come to save her, and then left. Thinking of this, Mu Lingbing abruptly opened her eyes. She had fainted before seeing Yixian return safely. Did Yixian come back? How dangerous was the Yu family? And how shrewd was Yixiqing? Thinking of all this, Mu Lingbing felt her hair stand on end. If something happened to Yixian because of this, that would be something she couldn't accept. Yixian. Mu Lingbing called out Bailey Hongzhuang's name, her face filled with worry. When Bailey Hongzhuang felt Mu Lingbing's movements, she had already walked to Mu Lingbing's side. Seeing Mu Lingbing's anxious appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly held Mu Lingbing's hand. Mother, I'm here, I'm here. Mu Lingbing opened her eyes and saw Bailey Hongzhuang by her side. Her nervousness and worry gradually dissipated. She held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. Yixian, thank goodness you're all right. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Mother, I made sufficient preparations before going to save you. Absolutely nothing will happen. Mu Lingbing still had lingering fears. The Yu family is no different from a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. You were really lucky to be able to save us. All these years, she and Lan Yunxiao had tried many times to escape that hellish place. However, Yixiqing was too shrewd. They had been discovered before they could escape. In the past, Yixiqing would occasionally leave the house, but as time passed, Yixiqing stayed in the house all the time. They didn't have any chance to leave. In addition, their bodies had gradually weakened, so leaving became even more impossible. Mother, no matter what, we've already left the Yu family. That kind of thing won't happen again. Don't worry. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mu Lingbing's eyes. unconsciously revealing a deep palpitation, and her heart couldn't help but ache. So many things had happened, and over 10 years of torment, Mu Lingbing's fear had long seeped into her bones. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded as a smile appeared on her face. I didn't expect that after so many years, there would still be a time when we could leave. She had always thought that she would die in the Yu clan. The current environment was like a dream to her. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her, she knew that everything was real. Mu Lingbing immediately thought of Lan Yunxiao and hastily asked, "Where's your father?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and gestured for Mu Lingbing to look in the other direction. "My father is resting over there. He hasn't woken up yet." Mu Lingbing turned her head. As expected, Lan Yunxiao was lying on the other side of her. Seeing this, Mu Lingbing finally relaxed. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Lingbing were talking, Lan Yunxiao slowly woke up. When he opened his eyes and saw Mu Lingbing and Bailey Hongzhuang, a deep smile spread across his handsome face. Yixuan Lingbing, the family of 3 was finally reunited. Chapter 2053. Bailey Hongzhuang told Bewitching and Si Tuyen about Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's awakening. When Si Tuyen heard the news, his expression shook, and he couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. "Grandfather, do you want to go in and see my mother?" Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Si Tuyen's expression. She could feel his excitement and nervousness. After all these years, Mu Lingbing had never seen him before. Hearing this, Si Tuyen thought for a moment and shook his head. "They just woke up and need to rest well. They can't be too agitated. Let's wait for a few more days." After saying that, Si Tuyen slowly left. His footsteps grew heavier and heavier. Looking at Si Tuyen's back as he left, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown, her eyebrows filled with worry. "Hongzhuang, perhaps I'm afraid of returning home. Master still hasn't thought of how to face your mother," Bewitching said slowly. He had grown up with his master, and deeply understood his master's feelings for Mu Jin's. She was the person he didn't want to hurt the most in his life, but he had hurt Mu Jin's the most. Facing Mu Lingbing, his master also felt extremely guilty. It was because of this guilt that he couldn't face everything. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She also understood her grandfather's thoughts. "Not only that, my mother didn't have parents since she was young. I'm sure that when my mother asks about this, grandfather will be speechless. There's also news about grandmother." Bailey Hongzhuang was also an insightful person. From Si Tuyen's attitude, she could already see the problem. If grandmother died, it would be the hardest thing for grandfather to accept. So he was afraid. Bewitching looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were extremely correct. But master is right. What aunt needs now is to rest well and adjust her condition to recover as soon as possible. If master suddenly appears, auntie might not be able to bear it. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, "I will try to communicate with my mother first and try to find out her attitude." "This is a good idea." Bewitching's eyes were filled with a smile. As long as Mu Lingbing was mentally prepared, this matter would be much simpler. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house again. Bewitching did not want to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang and her family, so he did not go in to disturb them. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's eyes never left Bailey Hongzhuang. They hadn't seen their daughter for more than 10 years, and felt that they couldn't get enough of her. They had never thought that their daughter would grow up to be such an outstanding person while they were away. It was truly delightful. Bailey Hongzhuang poured 2 cups of water for Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao before asking, "Father, mother, how do you feel now?" According to her judgment, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's bodies had recovered quite a bit after the effects of these pills. At the very least, he was much stronger than his previous weak appearance. However, because the poison had not been removed, they still felt some pain. "We're already much better." Lan Yunxiao smiled. "You gave us so many pills, so how could we not be well?" Chapter 2054. Mu Lingbing couldn't help but look at Lan Yunxiao. "We took a lot of pills." Lan Yunxiao nodded. "Yixuan gave us almost all the pills that were useful to us." Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with astonishment. If it was the old her, taking some pills wouldn't have been a big deal. But now they were different. She and Lan Yunxiao were no longer the same as before. Bailey Hongzhuang had relied on her own efforts to reach where she was now. How could they let their daughter pay such a huge price? Yixuan, your father and I are already beyond cure. Why are you wasting those medicinal pills on us? Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with desolation. After so many years of torture, she understood her body's condition very well. Even if she was stronger than before, there was no way to cure the poison in her body. There was simply too much. Bailey Hongzhuang had done so much for them. It was truly a waste of resources. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Mu Lingbing had the same thoughts as Lan Yunxiao. She immediately said, "Mother, don't worry. Although the poison in your body is very complicated, and it will take some time to cure you, I will definitely succeed." Hearing her words, Mu Lingbing couldn't help but stare at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. Very few people can cure the poison Yu Siqing created. That's why she's so terrifying. Yixuan, we all understand. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that she didn't believe her. However, with her age, she wasn't very convincing. But she would use facts to prove herself to Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao. Yu Siqing's medical skills are good, but mine aren't bad either. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If not for that, Yu Siqing wouldn't have been unable to detoxify my poison. Seeing that Mu Lingbing didn't believe Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, the three beasts jumped out. Master's medical skills are very powerful. She's always been called a divine doctor. That old fellow Yu Siqing is already old. She's no match for Master. Mu Lingbing looked at the three beasts. Previously, she only knew that Baishir was Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast. She knew nothing about the black and white fur balls. However, the fact that these three demonic beasts could actually speak was simply too shocking. Yixian, who are they? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but ask. They are my contracted beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing was still confused. She asked uncertainly, all three? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. All three of them. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. Three contracted beasts? This was truly unheard of. This has something to do with my cultivation method. Bailey Hongzhuang explained with a smile. The three beasties winked at Mu Lingbing and Mu Lingbing, trying to express their cuteness. Yixian, did you just say that you poisoned Yu Siqing? Lan Yunxiao's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't overlook Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Mu Lingbing also returned to her senses, her eyes filled with curiosity. I didn't poison Yu Siqing, but the Yu family. Chapter 2055. When Bailey Hongzhuang recounted the events of that day, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were both dumbfounded. This situation was completely different from what they had imagined. They had been worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to escape from the Yu clan, and that the journey would be extremely dangerous. Who knew that not only did they leave the Yu clan, they even caused such a huge ruckus. The Yu clan was a cultivation family after all. Wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang a little too daring? Or had they been locked up by the Yu clan for so long that they no longer understood the situation in the Shengxian continent? Could it be that the Yu clan had fallen and was no longer the colossus it used to be? Yixuan, you mean that Yu Siqing still hasn't cured the poison? Mu Lingbing asked incredulously. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. According to the information we've gathered, she hasn't cured it yet. From the poison that Yu Siqing had concocted, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Yu Siqing's medical skills were not weak. As long as she had enough time, she would be able to cure it sooner or later. But now, it depended on how long she would need. After all, the longer she took, the greater the Yu clan's losses would be. At least, in this way, the Yu clan's next generation would not be a match for the other families. In reality, it was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had thought. Paper couldn't wrap fire. Even if the Yu clan had done their best to block the news, Yu Tianqing was not completely a Yu clan member. As the cultivators of Yu Tianqing left, the news naturally spread. Many cultivation families already knew about the Yu clan's situation. Some were shocked, some were sympathetic, but most of them were gloating. As a cultivation family, the Yu clan had never helped the world. They were completely focused on accumulating wealth. Usually, When someone in the clan needed help from the the Yu clan would demand an exorbitant price. Regarding this, even if they were dissatisfied, they could do nothing about it. Who would have thought that the Yu clan would encounter such a huge problem this time? This was really good news. A certain clan. The Yu clan has really eaten their own medicine this time. They have suffered such a huge loss. I wonder when they offended such a powerful poison master. Even Yu Xiqing was stumped. Recently, the Yu clan's dead people have been brought out wave after wave. If you don't cure the poison, I'm afraid that the Yu clan will be removed from the list. Another family. Who asked the Yu clan to be so arrogant? Truly, evil people will be dealt with by evil people. Usually no one can control them. They really think they're so great. I've heard that the Yu clan recently issued a call for poison masters and doctors with strong poison techniques. One must know that there were countless poison masters and doctors who had racked their brains to go to the Yu clan, but the Yu clan had completely ignored them. Now that something like this has happened, it's really ridiculous to gather everyone together. I wonder how many people have gone. What a joke. The poison is so powerful and contagious. Even Yu Xiqing can't deal with it. Wouldn't it be the same as sending others to their deaths? So, no one went there at all? Ha ha ha. When Bailey Hongzhuang talked about this matter, she was very happy. She was quite satisfied with the interest this time. However, this was just the beginning. The Yu clan would definitely pay a heavy price for everything that their family had suffered all these years. Chapter 2056. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so powerful. The Yu family was a world-renowned medical family. That was why they had gone to the Yu family to seek medical help, resulting in their current predicament. But now, their daughter's medical skills had reached such a level? So the Yu family has suffered a great loss this time, Lan Yunxiao said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. They've gone overboard these past few years. They deserve this loss. Mu Lingbing narrowed her eyes. Indeed, they deserve it. As a medical family, the Yu family pretended to practice medicine to help the world, but in reality, they didn't have the heart of a bodhisattva. A few doctors with good medical skills had been recruited to the Yu clan. As a result, the possibility of everyone seeking medical treatment had decreased by a few degrees. Over the years, Yu Xiqing had often told them about various things. This was because Yu Xiqing believed that they would never be able to escape, so they had a good understanding of the Yu family's situation. If it weren't for the Yu family, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Lan Yunxiao's eyes flashed with hatred. If he still had the strength, he would definitely destroy the Yu family with his own hands. They were very clear in their hearts that Bailey Hongzhuang was doing all this to avenge them, so that they could vent their resentment. In reality, after learning of this matter, they were indeed delighted. Father, Mother, I've already made a few sets of antidotes. Bailey Hongzhuang reached out and took the antidotes from the side. Because you've been poisoned with too many poisons, I can't determine the composition of these poisons in such a short time, so I can only determine some. Once these poisons are removed, I'll try to detoxify the others. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression revealed some helplessness. In this situation, she could only do this. Once the symptoms of some poisons disappeared, she would be able to determine the other poisons. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Lingbing suddenly remembered something, and her eyes brightened. Yixuan, I remember the composition of Yu Xiqing's poison. Will it be of any help to you? Mu Lingbing asked slowly. She didn't know much about medicine, but it was said that it would help doctors. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes filled with surprise and astonishment. Mother, you really remember the composition? It was precisely because she didn't know the exact composition that she could only discover it one by one. If Mu Lingbing knew the composition, then it would be easy for her to detoxify the poison. Mu nodded her head slightly. Yu Xiqing's every time she made a poison, she would tell us the composition and ingredients of the poison. I was locked up in the dungeon all day and had nothing else to do. Thus, when Yu Xiqing mentioned this, I remembered it. In truth, she had knew the Yus, she had wanted to remember everything. After all, if she had the chance to come out in the future, she might be able to cure the poison. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties all understood. Chapter 2057. Mother, if you know these ingredients, I'll be able to detoxify your poison very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a joyful smile. She never thought that Mu Lingbing would be so meticulous, actually remembering all of this. In this way, the most difficult problem could be solved. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other with joy in their eyes. They never thought that they would be able to detoxify their poison one day. Bailey Hongzhuang handed a brush and paper to Mu Lingbing. Mother, think carefully and write it down. Although Mu Lingbing tried her best to remember all of this, it wasn't easy for her to remember. So much time had passed, and so many poisons had been used. Your mother has a photographic memory. As long as she wants to remember something, she'll never forget it. Lan Yunxiao's face rippled with an elegant and charming smile. Mu Lingbing was gifted with this ability. Because of this, Mu Lingbing had an incomparable advantage in terms of cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes widened with surprise and surprise. She never expected Mu Lingbing to have such a unique and powerful ability. It was truly astonishing. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Yunxiao were talking, Mu Lingbing had already recorded the ingredients on a piece of paper. She didn't pause at all, as if she'd always remembered everything. She slowly wrote down the names and ingredients of each poison one after another. The three beasties watched in amazement. No wonder Master was so powerful. Master's parents weren't just ordinarily powerful either. Mu Lingbing wrote very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest maintained their silence as they watched Mu Lingbing write. After a while, Mu Lingbing handed the brush and paper to Bailey Hongzhuang. It's all here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the content written on the paper, and her face suddenly had a clear look of understanding. Just as she'd predicted, the antidotes she'd created were correct. Other than that, there were a few other poisons that she'd only vaguely guessed at, and wasn't completely sure. Now that she understood the situation, she was able to prescribe the right medicine. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, unsure if she could do it. After all, Wuxia was too famous. Soon Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Father, Mother, don't worry. I'll be able to detoxify all your poisons soon. Both Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's eyes lit up with joy at her words. They'd thought they didn't have long to live, but when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang, they couldn't help but feel sad. They'd just met, and soon they'd be separated. However, they now had the hope to continue living. How could they not be happy about that? Father, Mother, Hongzhuang, Yunyun's Bing and Lan Yunxiao's mothers and Lan Yunxiao. Bailey Yu's Yun Mu to Mu to Hongzhuang. It looked like she was going to win this battle between her and Wuxia. Wuxia would never have imagined that Mu Lingbing had memorized all the ingredients. With her skills, it wouldn't be difficult for her to create the appropriate antidote. Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao took the antidote and didn't doubt its effects at all. They directly swallowed it. Chapter 2058. You've been poisoned for a long time, and the poison is stubborn in your body. My antidote can detoxify the poison, but the process will be painful, Bailey Hongzhuang explained slowly. She also wanted to alleviate some of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's pain, but this was something that could only be resolved by them. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing smiled nonchalantly at Bailey Hongzhuang's words. What kind of torture had they not endured all these years? The pain of detoxifying poison was nothing to them. After all, detoxifying some of the poison would lessen their pain in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao's thoughts. This pain shouldn't be difficult for them to bear. Very quickly, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing felt a burst of pain and itchiness in their bodies. The antidote passed through their cells and removed every bit of the poison from their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang stood guard at the side to prevent any accidents from happening. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be much of a problem with detoxifying these poisons at the same time. An hour later, PFFF. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing spat out blood clots. However, the blood clots had turned completely black and fell to the ground with a sizzling sound. Just by looking at them, they knew how terrifying the poison was. Yet it had remained in their bodies all these years. It was truly shocking. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt relieved. Father, mother, do you feel better? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing looked at each other. After enduring so much pain, their faces were pale. However, at this moment, after Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, they really felt that their bodies were a bit more relaxed. And the pain that had been accompanying them was also reduced a bit. As expected, it's much better, Mu Lingbing exclaimed at Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, she no longer doubted Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to create these antidotes without understanding the ingredients. This was not something an ordinary doctor could do. Yishuan, I didn't expect your medical skills to be so formidable. Lan Yunxiao smiled. As for his daughter, he really admired her very much. Yishuan, how did you survive all these years? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but be curious when she saw how outstanding her daughter was. She wanted to know every step of Hongzhuang's growth over the years. Seeing Mu Lingbing's curious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, Mother, you've just neutralized some of the poison, and your bodies have been drained. Let's take a good rest for now. I'll tell you about my experiences over the years next time. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, she did feel weak and exhausted. She still had plenty of time to spend with Bailey Hongzhuang in the future. The future was long, so there was no need to rush. After Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao rested, Bailey Hongzhuang instructed the three beasts to keep an eye on the situation before leaving the room. Since she already knew the ingredients of these poisons, she naturally had to create the antidote as soon as possible. The sooner she created the antidote, the sooner her parents could be relieved of their pain. She was no stranger to some of these poisons. Chapter 2059. Bailey Hongzhuang studied it carefully. After thinking about what materials she needed, she went to the alchemy hall. She had to get these herbs back first before she could configure the antidote. Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way to the alchemy hall. Passing by the resource hall, she found that it was crowded and lively. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a while, and found that today was the day to receive cultivation resources. No wonder there were so many people coming today. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Now she was not in the mood to receive these things. She just wanted to detoxify her parents as soon as possible. As long as her parents could be detoxified a day earlier, they could end the pain earlier. Xia Jiqing and the others had been worried about Bailey Hongzhuang since Bewitching came back. However, they had never had the chance to see Bewitching. Naturally, they had no way to inquire about these things. Just as Xia Jiqing received the cultivation resources and was about to return to the Vermilion Bird Hall, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. Her eyes could not help but be filled with excitement. Hongzhuang. Chapter 2060. When I came back, I was delayed because of some things. I made everyone worry about me. I'm really sorry. Bailey Hongzhuang's light and pleasant voice had a trace of apology. This time, she really put all her attention on her parents and forgot to tell Xia Jiqing and the others. It was really her thoughtlessness. Everyone still had some complaints in their hearts. But at this moment, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the dissatisfaction in their hearts completely dissipated. Hongzhuang was different from them. Hongzhuang had more things to do than them. Moreover, they had been with Hongzhuang for so long, and always felt that Hongzhuang had some secrets. In this regard, no one said anything. It's okay, Hongzhuang. As long as you are okay, we can rest assured. Xia Jiqing said with a smile. Originally, she was complaining about Hongzhuang, but now listening to Hongzhuang's explanation, she was a little embarrassed. Dongfang Yu and the others nodded. Yes, as long as you are okay. Gong Xiaoqing, Yuan Xiaoman, and the others all had smiles on their faces. Boss, I haven't seen you for a while. You must have made a lot of progress, right? Yuan Xiaoman's face was filled with a curious smile. Every time she saw her boss, she couldn't help but marvel at her progress. Speaking of which, she had always been with her boss before. She didn't understand how her boss cultivated, and how her progress was so much faster than them. As Yuan Xiaoman's voice fell, Everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. It must be known that during the time they stayed in Tiangang's sect, they also didn't relax for a moment. Now they were different from before. The strength of the cultivators around them was very strong. If they didn't work hard, the ranking on the list of famous pillars was clearly written. Every time their ranking dropped, it would make them feel ashamed. Therefore, they could only work as hard as they could to prevent their rankings from dropping. Now they finally understood why the cultivators in the sects could cultivate so much faster than the cultivators in the secular world. It was not only because of the difference in cultivation resources, but also because of a sense of urgency. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. There is not much change. Previously, she mainly cultivated her own control of Yuanqi and Wuji Palace. She only improved her cultivation on the Heaven Stairway at night. Later on, she focused all her energy on developing explosives and rescuing her parents. Her cultivation was delayed by quite a bit. As soon as this remark came out, Yuan Xiaoman and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Their eyes were filled with a strange color. This situation wasn't in line with Bailey Hongzhuang's style at all. Although everyone had some doubts, they didn't say anything. Yuan Jixin smiled and said, "Boss, we are all working hard to catch up of you." Just as Yuan Jixin had said, Bailey Hongzhuang was the goal of all of them. Although the cultivators in the branch hall gave them a lot of pressure, their real motivation was Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not stronger than theirs. However, everyone clearly came together, but Bailey Hongzhuang surpassed them by so much. Since Bailey Hongzhuang could do it, it proved that all of this was feasible. Therefore, they must work hard to not be left behind too much. Chapter 2061. Hongzhuang, where are you going? Gong Xiaoqing asked. They did not see Bailey Hongzhuang in the resource hall. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come here to get cultivation resources from the resource hall. I'm going to the alchemy hall to buy some herbs, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone suddenly understood. For Bailey Hongzhuang, in addition to cultivation, there were also alchemy, inscription, and medical skills. Maybe Hongzhuang would mainly focus on alchemy during this time. So that's how it is. Gong Xiaoqing suddenly said, Hongzhuang, when will you go back to the Vermilion Bird Hall to cultivate? Xia Jiqing asked curiously. Bailey Hongzhuang had not appeared in the Vermilion Bird Hall since the last time she left. Her ranking was dropping little by little. I'll go back in a few days. I have some things to do recently. Her dark phoenix eyes were filled with thoughts. As a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall, it was indeed inappropriate for her to not return to the Vermilion Bird Hall for so long. Fortunately, Si Tian had already greeted the hall master before, so there was nothing to do with it. Bailey Hongzhuang left after chatting with everyone for a while. She was really busy now. After Xia Jiqing and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang leave, their faces were filled with doubts. I don't know what Hongzhuang is busy with these days. She seems to have lost some weight. Xia Jiqing sighed. She really hoped that she could help Hongzhuang, but now there was nothing she could do. This feeling was really depressing. Boss has always been very busy. When she is free, she will naturally contact us. Yuan Xiaoman was very optimistic. Boss's identity was not the same as theirs. As the sweetheart of the young sect master, Boss had to bear much more than them. Therefore, what they could do now was to understand Boss. In a few days, when Hongzhuang is free, she will definitely tell us everything. Dongfangyu smiled brightly, his peach blossom eyes slightly raised. No matter what happened, he believed that Hongzhuang would always treat them as friends. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, her mind was also thinking about Xia Jiqing and the others. Looking at everyone's appearance today, it was obvious that everyone had adapted well in Tiangang's sect, and she did not need to worry. As for the matter of her parents, she still needed to keep it a secret. Although she believed in Xia Jiqing and the others, she could not let her parents' lives. Yu Siqing had placed all her attention on concocting the antidote, so she didn't have enough time to confirm the identity of the two corpses in the dungeon. Once Yu Siqing came back to her senses, she might come to find Situ Yin to inquire. If someone leaked the news, the situation would be a lot more trouble. His parents were still so weak. Plus, once the Lan family knew about this, Lan Jingquang and his family would be prepared. Their plan wouldn't be so easy to carry out. Therefore, before her parents recovered, she could only hide this news. When Bailey Hongzhuang came to the alchemy hall, she saw that the alchemy hall was full of people. It was very lively. Chapter 2062. Although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time coming to Tiangang Sect's alchemy hall, she felt that it was very familiar. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang came to the place where medicinal herbs were sold, and directly told the disciple the medicinal herbs she needed. After the disciple saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually needed so many medicinal herbs, his eyes were also filled with a touch of surprise. Moreover, these medicinal herbs were of all kinds, and he actually couldn't see what they were for. However, he was no stranger to Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. In fact, presumably the disciples of Tiangang sect would not find it strange. Therefore, even if the disciple had doubts in his heart, he did not dare to neglect. After all, who dared to offend Tiangang sect's future young master's wife? Wasn't this courting death? Just as the disciple went to help Bailey Hongzhuang get the medicinal herbs, the conversation of the surrounding cultivators entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. In another month, the alchemist selection will begin. I don't know how many newcomers there will be in our alchemy hall this time. Yes, every time our alchemy hall recruits people, it's later than the other 4 halls. I hope a few junior sisters will come, haha. I heard that the selection this time is very big. Not only will they select newcomers, but even we will also have an assessment. What? Is it true or false? I accidentally heard it when the elders were talking. Although I'm not too clear about the details, I can guarantee that I didn't hear wrongly. In that case, we have to prepare early. If we don't perform well at that time, it will be terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also lit up after hearing everyone's conversation. In that case, Lu Qingyue would soon come to Tiangang sect to participate in the alchemist assessment. Everyone saw Lu Qingyue's infatuation with Gong Shaoqing. As early as when they left Kanglan school, Lu Qingyue had already said that she would definitely come when the time came. She believed that Lu Qingyue had been waiting for this alchemist assessment for a long time. However, this alchemist assessment seemed to be a little different. She believed that with Lu Qingyue's attainments in alchemy, she would definitely be able to pass this assessment. Regarding Lu Qingyue's persistence, she also very much admired. She also sincerely hoped that Lu Qingyue and Gong Shaoqing could be lovers and get married. That would be the best result. Originally, after Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing got together, she was a little worried about Yuan Xiaoman's mood. Fortunately, when he saw Yuan Xiaoman today, he saw that Yuan Xiaoman still had a lively appearance, without the slightest bit of discouragement or sadness. Although it may be that Yuan Xiaoman deliberately did not want to show it, on the other hand, it was related to Yuan Xiaoman's carefree personality. In short, everything was developing in a good direction. Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely happy. Very quickly, I have prepared all the herbs that Bailey Hongzhuang needs. Bailey Hongzhuang took the herbs and a smile appeared on her face. Thank you. As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang turned and left the alchemy hall. However, the disciple who saw Bailey Hongzhuang's smile looked at the back of Bailey Hongzhuang as she left. He was still immersed in Bailey Hongzhuang's smile, and did not recover. Bailey Hongzhuang's outstanding appearance was well known, but everyone had only seen it once from a distance. Now that he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's warm smile, he understood why the young master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2063. After returning to the sect master's quarters, Bailey Hongzhuang dove into her room and began to concoct the antidote based on the poison. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing wouldn't be resting for long this time, so she hoped she could quickly concoct all the antidotes. Right now, she felt an indescribable satisfaction from being able to see Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's smiles. Kinship was just that peculiar. Seeing the other person happy made her feel even happier. Bailey Hongzhuang felt that after saving her parents, she had become even more passionate in doing things. It was as if there was an inexhaustible energy in her body. All of her hard work, was for the sake of seeing their smiles. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang begin her research as soon as she returned, Bewitching stood outside the room and quietly watched Bailey Hongzhuang for a moment. His lips curled into a gentle and enchanting smile before he turned and left. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang now, even he could feel a kind of happiness. This kind of happiness could only be given to Hongzhuang by Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. It was something he couldn't give. However, to be able to see Bailey Hongzhuang like this, he also had an indescribable satisfaction. When the three beasties saw this, they looked at each other and smiled. Master is full of fighting spirit right now. I think we should just wait patiently. Master won't be coming out for a while, Baisher said with a smile. Although Master was busier than before, they could feel that she was the happiest right now. I really hope that Master's parents can recover quickly. It would be best if they could recover their strength. Xiao He clasped her hands together and couldn't help praying. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were heroes in the past, so there was no need to mention their strength. However, now that they were in this state, even if the poison was cured, their strength couldn't compare to Lan Jingquang's. Speaking of which, Lan Jingquang and his family had really harmed Master's family. Definitely, Master is so powerful, so her parents must be powerful as well, Xiao Bai said with certainty. It firmly believed that everything could be resolved. Bailey Hongzhuang focused all her attention on the antidote. Looking at the various ingredients written down by Mu Lingbing, Bailey Hongzhuang, who was proficient in medicine, could understand the effects of these poisons after careful consideration. However, when she understood the true effects of these poisons, the hatred in her heart only deepened. Yu Xiqing truly had a heart as venomous as snakes and scorpions. Every single one of her poisons was extremely vicious. Once consumed, the person wouldn't immediately die, but they would suffer immense pain. Although Bailey Hongzhuang knew how to concoct poisons, she didn't use them often. Only when she met some extremely hateful people would she use such a method to punish them. However, Yu Yuzes had used all these poisons. She understood why her parents held the sect. If it weren't for the fact that their bodies were strong enough in the past, they would have lost their lives under the ravages of these poisons. Even though they'd managed to preserve their lives, their condition couldn't get any worse. Suppressing the hatred in her heart, Bailey Hongzhuang focused on concocting the antidotes. She made 2 portions of each antidote and placed them to the side. Chapter 2064. While Bailey Hongzhuang was concentrating on detoxifying Lan Yunxiao and Yu Yang's poison, Limitless Palace's Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu had also received the news. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left for the Yu clan, Nangong Wu couldn't help but worry. She even regretted not following along. If she had followed along, then she wouldn't have to sit here and worry. Yu Linfeng looked at Nangong Wu's restless appearance and felt helpless. Nangong Wu had always been an impatient person. As long as she didn't know the result, she would be very anxious. After interacting with each other for so many years, he understood Nangong Wu's character very well. Wu, don't worry. Since Sect Master went with Hongzhuang and the others, then there definitely won't be any problems. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu glanced at Yu Linfeng, her expression revealing some dissatisfaction. No matter what, you always have this expression. Isn't it better to be safe than sorry? Don't worry. What can happen if Sect Master is there? Yu Linfeng seemed very indifferent. The Yu clan's strength isn't weak, but you also know Sect Master's strength. Even if they don't succeed in saving them, leaving safely is definitely not a problem. After all, the Yu clan doesn't dare to rashly offend the Tiangang sect. Yu Linfeng's expression changed a bit. In his opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' plan had a high probability of success. There shouldn't be any mistakes. It's already a big problem that they didn't manage to save them. After Yu Xiqing knows about this, won't she immediately kill them to silence them? Hongzhuang definitely won't be able to take it. Nangong Wu couldn't help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Although Bailey Hongzhuang usually had a very indifferent appearance, she understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. If such a thing really happened, Hongzhuang would definitely be very sad. She didn't want to see such a scene. Yu Linfeng faintly sighed. Women always like to let their imaginations run wild. He felt that there wouldn't be so many accidents. Just as the two were talking, Gu Taihong appeared in front of them. Palace Master, Madam, a letter from Tiangang sect. Following Gu Taihong's voice, Nangong Wu's words, her eyes suddenly lit up. She immediately snatched the letter, and impatiently opened the letter. Impatiently. Seeing Nangong Wu's actions, Gu Taihong was also stunned. His eyes were filled with a touch of astonishment. Yu Linfeng, on the other hand, looked as if he had expected it. He waved his hand at Gu Taihong, indicating that there was nothing else. Seeing this, Gu Taihong then left. Nangong Wu couldn't wait to read the contents of the letter. After reading it, Nangong Wu couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha ha. This is too funny. The Yu clan is too unlucky. I really didn't expect Hong Zhuang to come up with such a despicable move. The Yu clan is probably mad at this moment. After reading the contents of the letter, Nangong Wu admired Bailey Hong Zhuang even more. In fact, she usually had a lot of despicable moves. She didn't expect Bailey Hong Zhuang to have even more despicable moves. Presumably, the Yu clan was completely dumbfounded at this moment. When Yu Linfeng saw Nangong Wu suddenly laughing so happily, his eyes were filled with a touch of astonishment. He then said, "Wu, what is written on it that can make you laugh like this?" Chapter 2065. Yu Linfeng looked at Nangong Wu suspiciously, waiting for Nangong Wu's reply. Hong Zhuang. Hong Zhuang blew up the Yu clan's martial arts hall. Ha ha ha. She is indeed worthy of being the person that I have my eyes on. Yu Linfeng was slightly startled, his eyes gradually widening. He had never thought that Hong Zhuang would be so daring to blow up the martial arts hall. That was the most important place in a cultivation family. However, thinking about it carefully, if the martial arts hall had been blown up, it would have attracted the attention of everyone in the Yu clan. Bailey Hong Zhuang's actions were also correct. Not only that, Hong Zhuang had also blown up the Yu clan's ancestral hall. I never thought that Hong Zhuang would be such a genius. I had only told Hong Zhuang to throw 2 sets of explosives to attract everyone's attention. I never thought that Hong Zhuang's move would be so powerful. The ancestral hall blew up. When Yu Linfeng heard this result, his eyebrows couldn't help but tremble. It seemed that this disciple of his really couldn't be offended. The Yu clan would never have dreamt that there would be such a day. The martial arts hall was actually the most important place in the Yu clan. The ancestral hall was nominally the most important place in the Yu clan. Hong Zhuang really didn't miss anything, catching the Yu clan unprepared. So, Hong Zhuang and the rest have already returned to Tiangang sect safely? Yu Linfeng asked. As the hidden power behind Bailey Hong Zhuang, it was best that he didn't personally send people to find out about this, so as to avoid exposing his identity. After all, their limitless palace, and the Yu clan didn't have any interactions. If they suddenly sent people to find out about this, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. So they had been waiting here for news. Nangong Wu nodded. They have already returned safely, but they told us that they can't come over for the time being. As she spoke, Nangong Wu handed the letter to Yu Linfeng. She never thought that the explosives she made would have such a good effect. It really made her happy. Yu Linfeng read through the contents of the letter again, and only then did he relax. I told you, they will definitely succeed. You don't have to worry about this. Yu Linfeng's face was full of smiles. Now that Bailey Hong Zhuang was finally reunited with her parents, he couldn't help but feel happy for Bailey Hong Zhuang. Lan Yunxiao was originally a heroic figure, but it was a pity that he was persecuted and reduced to such a state. He remembered that when he was still a child in the Lan family, Lan Yunxiao was already the center of attention. When he was bullied, Lan had stood in front of him to protect him, and that was when his impression of Lan Yunxiao began. Although he didn't Yuan Nangong, he didn't Yuan Yuz and the Yu clan. At that time, he had no parents and no one to protect him. If it wasn't for Lan Yunxiao, his life would be even more miserable. But not long after, he left the Lan family. Perhaps, even Lan Yunxiao himself didn't remember him. But he remembered. In this huge Lan family, other than his parents, the only person he had a good impression of was Lan Yunxiao. When he found out about Lan Yunxiao's misfortune, he felt indignant and regretful. He originally wanted to become friends with Lan Yunxiao when he had the ability. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance. But he didn't expect that he would take Lan Yunxiao's daughter as his disciple. Chapter 2066. Yu Linfeng felt that most of the time, everything was arranged by fate. If it wasn't for the guidance of the heavens, how could all of this happen so coincidentally? A heroic character like Lan Yunxiao shouldn't have lived his life like that. Fortunately, he had successfully left the Yu family. Although it wouldn't be easy to restore his former appearance, he believed that anyone who had seen Lan Yunxiao's boundless magnificence wouldn't doubt the possibility of him standing up again. Lan Jingquang was also an outstanding person, both in ability and talent. Unfortunately, Lan Jingquang's heart was too narrow. If Lan Jingquang could give up the position of house head and work together with Lan Yunxiao and his brother, the Lan family would be unprecedentedly powerful. However, there were many people in this world who harbored jealousy. After being suppressed for so many years, Lan Jingquang had long been unable to endure it. Regarding this, he was able to understand. However, if he could even be so ruthless to his own niece, then this Lan Jingquang was a little too deranged. Committing too much injustice leads to one's own destruction. Lan Jingquang would never have thought that the niece he had ruthlessly persecuted would grow up to be such an outstanding person. This time, Lan Jingquang had miscalculated. He wanted to imprison Lan Yunxiao for the rest of his life and let him see his success. However, he never thought that Lan Yunxiao would be able to make a comeback one day. As for Lan Jingquang's daughter Lan Qingyan, Yu Linfeng had never seen Lan Qingyan's appearance, but he had heard of her. Even though Lan Qingyan's reputation was resounding, and she was a famous genius, his intuition told him that Lan Qingyan was definitely not Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. Even though there was still a gap between Bailey Hongzhuang and the genius cultivators nurtured by aristocratic families, he believed that this gap would continue to shrink. A child born in a wealthy family would never understand the pain and hardship of climbing up from the bottom. Logically speaking, these two identities shouldn't have any intersection, but it happened. The day when the two of them crossed paths, Lan Qingyan would slowly be defeated. Because Bailey Hongzhuang could take any blow, but Lan Qingyan couldn't. He hoped that Lan Yunxiao's family could take back their previous position, because it originally belonged to Lan Yunxiao. Perhaps it was because Lan Yunxiao was a heaven-sent genius that he had to endure such suffering in his life. In the past, he had also endured such pain to reach where he was today. He asked himself, if he had stayed in the Lan family like that back then, he would probably be just an ordinary person now. He would be mediocre doing the family business for the Lan family. Perhaps what he had endured in the past was unimaginable to ordinary people. But now that he thought about it, he felt that it was all worth it. Even if he had to do it all over again, he would still choose to do it. Nangong Wu saw Yu Linfeng's deep eyes and felt that Yu Linfeng was recalling something. Actually, she felt that Yu Linfeng and Lan Yunxiao were about the same age, so they might know each other. She understood Yu Linfeng very well. Because of their childhood experiences, it wasn't easy for Yu Linfeng to trust someone. However, ever since Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, Yu Linfeng had an extraordinary trust in Bailey Hongzhuang. He even let Bailey Hongzhuang use a secret like the stairway to heaven. Chapter 2067. Although Nangong Wu usually had a carefree attitude towards many things and wouldn't take it to heart at all, Nangong Wu didn't care at all. However, the person she cared about the most was Yu Linfeng. As long as it concerned Yu Linfeng, she would always be the most cautious. Yu Linfeng didn't want to talk about his childhood experiences. Thus, even though she was very curious, she never asked. Linfeng, we can be at ease now. After a few days, how about we go to Tiangang sect to visit Hong Zhuang and the others? Nangong Wu revealed a bright and excited smile. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had to take care of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing and couldn't come to Limitless Palace, they could still go. Hearing that, Yu Linfeng's gaze landed on Nangong Wu. With a single glance, he could see Nangong Wu's impatient appearance. He couldn't help but laugh. After a few days, We'll go after Hong Zhuang's parents get better. Even if we go now, Hong Zhuang won't be in the mood to entertain us. If she entertains us and delays the treatment of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, we won't be willing to do that. With Lan Yunxiao's personality, he probably wouldn't be willing to see others with his current appearance. Nangong Wu, who was originally impatient, felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her when she heard Yu Linfeng's words. However, after thinking carefully, it really was as Yu Linfeng said. Bailey Hongzhuang must be very busy right now, so she didn't want to add to the trouble. Then I'll listen to you. Since Hong Zhuang and the others are fine, I can be at ease. You can continue your seclusion, and I'll continue researching my explosives. After speaking, Nangong Wu disappeared from Yu Linfeng's sight. Seeing this, Yu Linfeng helplessly shook his head. Nangong Wu originally had a special fondness for making explosives, but because she hadn't been able to achieve good results, she paid more attention to it. Now that the explosive's power had increased, Nangong Wu's enthusiasm had reached an unprecedented high. Now, if she wanted to find Nangong Wu, she had to go to the explosives workshop. Although his heart was filled with helplessness, Yu Linfeng's face couldn't help but reveal a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang threw herself into making the antidote without rest or sleep. Even if her medical skills were very good, Yu Siqing's poison was her own creation, so Bailey Hongzhuang would need a certain amount of time to crack it. Si Tuyen and Di Beichen were a bit worried when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang so engrossed in her work. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't tire herself out after saving the two of them with great difficulty. Fortunately, when Di Beichen went to deliver food, Bailey Hongzhuang would still stop to rest. On this day, Di Beichen slowly walked into Bailey Hongzhuang's room with a midnight snack in his hand. Hearing the sound outside the door, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head and saw Di Beichen's extraordinarily handsome face. "Wife, you've been busy all day. Eat some supper and rest for a while before continuing." Di Beichen's voice was as gentle as water, and his beautiful face was overflowing with concern. Hong Zhuang had a different kind of charm when she was serious, but he couldn't help but worry. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to continue her research, but after seeing Di Beichen's concerned appearance, she nodded. "Okay, then let's eat together." Di Beichen smiled. "Okay." Chapter 2068. Di Beichen raised his brows, his deep eyes flickering as he asked in a low voice, "Is there a problem?" Di Beichen's heart sank. He knew how important Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. Now that Hong Zhuang had finally reunited with her parents, he was the last person he wanted to see if anything happened to her. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Di Beichen's expression and reached out to hold Di Beichen's hand, a gentle and beautiful smile on her lips. "Beichen, this isn't bad news." Di Beichen finally relaxed after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. His face also returned to its usual handsome appearance. "Then what is it?" "I took a look at the various poisons that Yu Siqing had concocted. Logically speaking, a cultivator who consumed so many poisons would only die. It's impossible for them to persevere. However, my parents persevered for so long. It's truly miraculous. Moreover, many of these poisons are mutually restraining. I believe that Yu Siqing gave my parents some antidotes every time they were about to die, so that they would suffer but not die." Bailey Hongzhuang slowly analyzed the situation. She believed that her judgment wasn't wrong. Di Beichen's eyes darkened, his expression cold. Yu Siqing's actions were truly loathsome. "However, I believe that my parents' bodies have been filled with poison for so many years. After I helped them detoxify the poison, the combination of the poisons they had consumed before had a very miraculous effect. I believe that my parents' physiques might change into one where they are immune to all poisons." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes brightened. She had heard of this when she was learning medicine from the elders in her family. There was a situation where some people were poisoned for many years. Because the poisons had the characteristics of mutually reinforcing and restraining one another, they would sometimes develop a physique that was immune to all poisons. However, this physique was very difficult to change. Most people died after being poisoned, so it was impossible for such a thing to happen. There were only a few times when it could happen by chance. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that her parents fit the description. As soon as these words came out, Bewitching was stunned for a moment. Being immune to poison was an extremely miraculous physique. Only some people who had gone through special encounters would have such a physique. Even in the history of the Shengxian continent, this was rarely seen. Will it really become like this? Bewitching couldn't help but ask. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies could really undergo such a transformation, it would undoubtedly be for the best. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Although I'm not 100% sure, I'm 90% sure. When Bailey Hongzhuang first discovered this, she was a little excited. In the future, they would have to go back and face the Lan family once again. Yu Manlan's viciousness was not much different from Yu Xiqing's. Perhaps Yu Manlan would use the same trick again. If her parents' physiques were immune to all poisons, then they wouldn't have to worry about these schemes and plots. That's great. Bewitching couldn't help but reveal a pleasantly surprised expression. In this world, there were always losses and gains. Presumably, Yu Xiqing would never have thought that her years of poisoning would make Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing immune to all poisons. Chapter 2069. Wifey, how's the preparation of the antidote coming along? Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's busy table. There were too many medicinal herbs and records on it. Bailey Hongzhuang had been busy for a few days. He hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could have a good rest. After all, many things could not be rushed. I still need to prepare the antidote for 2 more poisons. Once the antidotes for these 2 poisons are prepared, then all of this can be resolved. Hearing this, Bewitching also breathed a sigh of relief. In that case, it won't be long before you can complete it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I should be able to prepare the antidote by tonight. With that, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes focused on Bewitching's handsome face. Beichen, I'm lucky to have you by my side all this time. I know that you've been worried about me these days. But don't worry, I know my body well. I won't tire myself out. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were full of tenderness. All along, Bewitching had been her strongest support. If not for Bewitching by her side, it would have been more difficult for her to complete all of this. It was because of Bewitching that she was able to do all of this without any distractions. Bewitching's eyes gradually softened, and the corners of his mouth opened into a bright and intoxicating smile. The raised corners of his eyes were like cherry blossoms in March, intoxicating. Wifey, as long as you're happy, that's the happiest thing for me. No matter what you do, I'll support you. But when you're doing all of this, you have to take good care of yourself. Don't let me worry. Bewitching's words were as gentle as a clear spring. They went straight to Bailey Hongzhuang's heart, softening her to the extreme. She had put all her thoughts on her parents, but Bewitching had always been protecting her. She really felt that perhaps all the suffering she had endured before was for the sake of meeting Bewitching. Compared to getting to know Bewitching, what he had suffered before was nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang nestled in Bewitching's arms. Feeling the familiar warmth and faint fragrance, her heart was at peace. Before she was reunited with her parents, she didn't have so many emotions in her heart. However, after seeing her parents' deep affection for her, she finally understood how precious kinship was. Bewitching was an orphan. He didn't know where his parents were all these years. Come to think of it, Bewitching's emotions must have worsened after she reunited with her parents. Bewitching was so outstanding. She couldn't understand why his parents left him. If possible, she really hoped that she could accompany Bewitching to find his parents. She believed that there were no parents in the world who didn't love their children, just like how she had lived so miserably before. But her parents had already given her the strongest love they could give her. It was just that she had never known it before. Bewitching's parents might have had no choice but to leave him. Now that Bewitching had grown up to be so outstanding, she believed that his parents would be proud to see him. Bailey Hongzhuang just thought all of this in her heart, but she didn't say it out. She didn't want to make Bewitching feel sad. Chapter 2070. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, the next morning, Bailey Hongzhuang had finished concocting all the antidotes. Bailey Hongzhuang stretched lazily. She had been busy for so many days, but she didn't feel tired at all. On the contrary, there was a different kind of satisfaction in her heart. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had finally left the room, their faces were filled with excited smiles. Master, you're done? Xiao He went to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Because Bailey Hongzhuang had been concentrating on concocting the antidote, they didn't dare to disturb her too much. They were afraid that it would affect Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly with a radiant and satisfied smile. That's right. Father and mother will be free from the pain of the poison today. These poisons existed in the human body and would always cause a dull pain. That's great. Xiao Bai couldn't hide her excitement. After waiting for so many days, they finally received good news. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that only Xiao He and Xiao Bai were by her side, her eyes filled with doubt. Why isn't Baisher with you today? The three beasties were usually together, but now there were only the two of them. This was a little strange. Xiao He and Xiao Bai answered in unison when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's question. Baisher is taking care of Master's father and mother in the bedroom. We don't dare to come out together. During this period, the three of them had taken turns shuttling back and forth between Bailey Hongzhuang, Lan Yunxiao, and Mu Lingbing's rooms. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing needed help, they would be the first to help. This was the task their master had given them, so they would definitely complete it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. It seemed that the three beasties were very reliable. How are my father and mother now? Their complexions are much better than before. They only asked a few times what you were doing. Xiao He smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved up. She took all the antidotes and walked towards Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's rooms. As long as the poison in her father and mother were cured, they only needed to recuperate, and their bodies would be strong again. Every time she saw her father and mother's pale faces, she felt very uncomfortable. After Bailey Hongzhuang entered the room, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing revealed a joyful smile. Yixuan, you're here. They hadn't seen her last time, but they didn't see her inzas, so they were missings. They wanted to see her as long as they could. They couldn't get enough of S. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a smile. Father, mother, how do you feel now? We're already much better. Compared to before, we can't be any better, Mu Lingbing replied. Mu Lingbing's words were sincere, and she wasn't lying. Although there were still waves of pain coming from her body, compared to what she had endured before, this was simply a drizzle. She could even ignore it. Now every minute and every second was an extravagant luxury compared to the past. Yixuan, I didn't expect your medical skills to be so superb. We feel much better now. Chapter 2071. For the past few days, they had been unconscious for a period of time. When they woke up, they didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the three beasties had always been by their side, and only told them that Bailey Hongzhuang was busy concocting the antidote. However, she had been concocting it day and night, so they were very worried. Bailey Hongzhuang saw the worry and concern on Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's faces, and her heart warmed. She only felt warmth in her heart. Father, mother, don't worry. I won't tire myself out. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang took out the antidote from her cosmos bag. Father, mother, I've already concocted all the antidotes. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with astonishment when they heard this. Even if Mu Lingbing remembered all the ingredients, wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang a little too fast? There were many kinds of poisons. Even with Bailey Hongzhuang's superb medical skills, she still needed to study the antidote. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face brimming with confidence, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing both knew that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't lying. It seemed that they had underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were probably even better than Yu Xiqing's. They remembered how proud Yu Xiqing had been when she had concocted these poisons. She had confidently declared that ordinary people wouldn't be able to detoxify the poisons she had concocted. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to detoxify them all in a short time. If Yu Xiqing knew about this, she would probably die from anger. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang had only left Yu Xiqing one poison. But Yu Xiqing had been puzzled for so long. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. However, there are too many poisons in your bodies. If I detoxify them all at once, I'm afraid your bodies won't be able to take it. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. This was what she thought after understanding the characteristics of these poisons. Detoxification had certain requirements on the poisoned person's body. Although Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies were much better after 2 days of recuperation, it was still impossible for them to expel so much poison in such a short time. Therefore, he could only detoxify a few poisons in a few days. At the same time, he also had to pay attention to replenishing his body. Fortunately, Situ Yen had already brought all kinds of tonics over. Even the meals prepared for Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were specially prepared. They were all very nutritious for their bodies. It was because of this that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's complexions improved in such a short time. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. They weren't doctors and didn't know what to do. Now, I can only remove a few in a few days. I'll be able to remove all of them within a month, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing revealed relieved smiles. They were also clear that they couldn't recover overnight. They needed time to recover bit by bit. Let me take a look at your condition first. Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the side of the two people and sat down. She checked the condition of the two people's bodies through their pulse. With this check, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the bodies of the two were much better than before, which was really good news. Chapter 2072. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang returned to Tiangang sect, she had been staying in the sect master's palace and rarely left, except for the day when they went to the alchemy hall, where some disciples saw Bailey Hongzhuang. None of the other disciples saw her. It was as if she had never returned. Xia Jiqing and the others were full of doubts when they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had returned to Tiangang sect, but hadn't appeared. However, they didn't know where Bailey Hongzhuang was. Although they were full of worry and curiosity, they could only wait. They believed that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang was busy, she would definitely contact them. They had known Bailey Hongzhuang for so long and knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. She would never abandon her group of friends. Sect Master's Palace. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies were getting better little by little. Every few days, the concentrated poison in their bodies would be removed. With the gradual reduction of the poison in their bodies, their physical condition was also constantly improving. Compared to before, when they were so weak that they couldn't even stand up, they were now able to move around in the room. However, because they hadn't recovered yet, they didn't go outside to enjoy the breeze. Everyone's hearts were filled with joy at such a change. This was what they wanted to see the most. Yixuan, can you tell us about your experiences over the years now? Mu Lingbing's condition today was exceptionally good. As long as this continued, it wouldn't take long for her to completely recover. In the past, she would sometimes fall into a deep sleep, so she never had the chance to understand what Bailey Hongzhuang had experienced over the years. Today, she finally had the chance to understand. Yixuan, tell us about it. We want to know how you've been all these years, Lan Yunxiao said. This was what they had always wanted to know. Although they couldn't participate in Bailey Hongzhuang's growth, they at least wanted to know. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She knew that if she didn't say anything, her parents would be anxious. At that time, father and mother left me at the entrance of the general's mansion in Fengbo country. Coincidentally, the general's wife gave birth to a stillborn child that day. Who knew that she would give birth to a stillborn child? Coincidentally, they found me and treated me as their own child. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other, rejoicing in their eyes. They didn't think that things would be so coincidental. They just saw that the general's residence was very good, and hoped that they could adopt Bailey Hongzhuang. Noticing Mu Lingbing's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood their thoughts. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have a good life in the past, because the general's wife didn't have much status. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't tell her about the hardships she had suffered in the past. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had already suffered enough. If they knew what had happened, it would only increase their guilt and sadness. This was something she didn't want to see. Later on, by chance, I married Bewitching. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. If she hadn't interacted with Bewitching back then, her life would have been different. Yixuan, you're already married? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were shocked. They hadn't expected this. Chapter 2073. Then why haven't we met before? Mu Lingbing's heart clenched. Their daughter's marriage was such an important matter, yet they still didn't know about it. Wasn't that too negligent? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. He's the one who went with me to save you two that day. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's faces revealed a look of understanding. Just as they had guessed, if the other party wasn't close enough to Bailey Hongzhuang, then he definitely wouldn't have accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang on such a dangerous mission. Bewitching's appearance was unforgettable. Although Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's attention had been on Bailey Hongzhuang, they still remembered Bewitching's appearance very clearly. Mu Lingbing, who was originally very nervous, calmed down a little when she found out that Bewitching was Bailey Hongzhuang's husband. At least, when she first met Bewitching, she felt that he was a trustworthy person. Moreover, he looked very outstanding. His appearance was extremely outstanding. What's his name? Why haven't we met after that? Lan Yunxiao usually didn't speak much, but when it came to his daughter's lifelong happiness, he couldn't help but ask questions. Back then, he had already felt that the other party was likely to be Bailey Hongzhuang's sweetheart, but he didn't expect their relationship to have progressed to this stage. Since he was already his son-in-law, he naturally had to take a good look at him. His name is Bewitching. Actually, he's always been here. He's the one who ordered people to prepare your meals every day. It's just that he didn't want to disturb your rest, so he didn't see you too. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, hearing Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's questions and worry that Bewitching wouldn't treat her well. She felt that it was very interesting. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation, Lan Yunxiao and the other two finally understood. Speaking of which, because they had to detoxify the poison, they were often in a state of unconsciousness. Even if Bewitching came, they wouldn't have the energy to talk to him. It was only today that the two of them felt much better. Since he's here, let him in. As your parents, we'll help you take a good look. Mu Lingbing held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. As her daughter's mother-in-law, she had to be on her daughter's behalf. Although they were already married, that was because they weren't around in the past. Now that they were here, if Bewitching dared to do anything bad to Bailey Hongzhuang, they would definitely not let Bewitching off. Hearing this, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips deepened. She immediately smiled and said, "All right, I'll go get him." Bailey Hongzhuang had always had confidence in Bewitching. With Bewitching's excellence and his affection for her, no one could find fault with him. She believed that her parents would think the same. These days, Bewitching wanted to find a chance to properly meet with Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing and reveal his identity. However, because Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing weren't in good spirits, they hadn't come yet. It was rare for Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing to be in such good condition today, so he wanted to properly meet them. Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the room. Bewitching was in the mountain behind the sleeping quarters. That was where Bewitching had been cultivating recently. Chapter 2074. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing looked at each other with complicated expressions. Yixuan is already married, and we didn't even make it on such an important day. Mu Lingbing's expression was desolate. Marriage was the most important thing in a woman's life. When she found out that she had given birth to a daughter, Mu Lingbing wanted to find a son-in-law in the future. As a mother, she wanted to personally dress her daughter, watch her get married, have children, and live a happy life. However, not only did she not see Yixuan grow up, she even missed the most important moment. Lan Yunxiao patted Mu Lingbing's shoulder. He understood that she must be very disappointed. In reality, even he felt an indescribable desolation in his heart. No matter what, the fact that we can still see Yixuan is already a blessing from the heavens. Even now he couldn't help but rejoice. If it weren't for the obsession in their hearts that made them give up the hope of living, they wouldn't have reunited today. Mu Lingbing nodded. That's right. This is already the best situation. I really shouldn't ask for too much. As Yixuan's parents, they hadn't done anything for her since she was young. On the contrary, it was Yixuan who went through untold hardships to save them. Now she was researching the antidote for them day and night. She was truly ashamed. However, as a mother, she really couldn't give Yixuan anything. I saw that Bewitching that day. He's a handsome young man and looks pretty good. A smile slowly spread across Lan Yunxiao's lips. When he saw Bewitching, he noticed that Bewitching's appearance was outstanding. His eyes were clear and not at all exaggerated. Instead, they emitted a sense of tenacity and steadiness. Just from his gaze and temperament, he could determine that Bewitching was a pretty good young man. Hearing this, Bewitching's appearance appeared in Mu Lingbing's mind. He's not bad-looking, but our Yixuan is also a rare beauty. If I had to say, it might not be a good thing for a man to be too handsome. If he was disloyal, Yixian probably wouldn't be happy either. Aren't you men all the same? Eating from the bowl and looking at the pot. Bing! What you're saying is wrong. I've always treated you wholeheartedly. Seeing that Mu Lingbing was talking about him, Lan Yunxiao hastily expressed his stance to prove his innocence. Even though many men in this world had multiple wives and concubines, to him, Mu Lingbing alone was enough. Mu Lingbing raised her brows and glanced at Lan Yunxiao. That's not necessarily true. Didn't your cousin secretly throw flirtatious glances at you? Lan Yunxiao straightened his face. Binger, she's just my little sister. Mu Lingbing pursed her lips. Back then, when Lan Yunxiao had married her, many women had been dissatisfied. Now that he thought about it, everything was still vivid in his mind. Fortunately, she was also not easy to bully, so she suppressed all of this. In her view, Yixian's personality was so good. If she could not suppress it, wouldn't that be troublesome? When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the back of the mountain, Bewitching was practicing his sword. Under the setting sun, his light golden robes fluttered in the wind. The youth wielded his sword like a cool breeze. Chapter 2075. When Bewitching saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived, he sheathed his sword, and a bewitching smile blossomed on his handsome face. Hongzhuang, how come you have the time to come find me? Bewitching was a little surprised to see Bailey Hongzhuang, but he was even more happy. Recently, Hongzhuang had been busy curing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's poison. He was the only one who went to find Hongzhuang when she was free. However, in Bewitching's eyes, all of this was extremely good. Back then, Hongzhuang had been in Fengbo Country or Azure Water Academy. It wasn't easy for him to find Hongzhuang if he wanted to. But now, Hongzhuang was in the same place as him. As long as they met, they would be able to see each other immediately. This was what Bewitching hoped for the most. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes at Bewitching's words. Bewitching, are you complaining that I haven't come to find you these days? Bewitching reached out and hugged Bailey Hongzhuang. He leaned over slightly and whispered into Bailey Hongzhuang's ear. Wife, even if you don't have time to find me, it's the same if I have time to find you. No matter how jealous I am, I won't be jealous of my in-laws. His warm breath blew into Bailey Hongzhuang's ear, making her feel numb and soft. Bewitching's teasing and playful words were full of ambiguity. Bailey Hongzhuang's earlobes instantly turned red, and her body went limp. Fortunately, Bewitching had been hugging her the entire time, so she didn't lose her composure. Bailey Hongzhuang reached out and pounded Bewitching's chest. You're really a bad guy. You only know how to bully me every time. Bewitching smiled. Wife, your husband can't wait to dote on you. How could I bully you? Let's not talk about this anymore. Someone is going to teach you a lesson now for bullying me. Bailey Hongzhuang crossed her arms in front of her chest with a somewhat complacent expression. Bewitching frowned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. He didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. Wife, what do you mean? My parents want to see you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled proudly. Now that her father and mother had been back for so long, it was time for Bewitching to meet them. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Bewitching's eyes widened. Really? My father-in-law and mother-in-law want to see me? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right. My parents want to see you and help me check you out. If I don't pass, are you going to abandon me? Di Beichen raised his brows and teased. Bailey Hongzhuang pretended to think seriously for a moment before nodding her head. Maybe it's very possible. My wife, you're thinking too much. Your husband will definitely not give you this chance. Di Beichen took Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. It's our first official meeting. We have to leave a good impression on them. We can't let them wait too long. Let's go quickly. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen so anxious to see Lan Yunxiao, the smile on her lips couldn't help but widen. Usually, it was rare to see Di Beichen so anxious. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were about to reach the couple's room, Di Beichen suddenly stopped. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. She didn't know what Di Beichen wanted to do. Chapter 2076. Although Di Beichen was confident in himself, the other party was Hongzhuang's parents. He didn't want them to have a bad impression of him. Seeing Di Beichen so serious, Bailey Hongzhuang was moved. In truth, based on Di Beichen's feelings for her, her parents wouldn't disagree. Knock knock. Bailey Hongzhuang knocked on the door. Hearing the commotion outside, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing straightened their expressions and said, "Come in." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked into the room together. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing could clearly see Di Beichen's appearance. He was dressed in a light golden brocade robe. His figure was tall and handsome, slender and noble. His features were elegant and handsome, and his smile was gentle. His eyes were clear and warm, without the slightest trace of coldness. He was just like a graceful and elegant young master. Seeing Di Beichen like this, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with satisfaction. This Di Beichen was a perfect match for their daughter. Greetings to uncle and aunt. Di Beichen bowed courteously. However, when Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing heard how Di Beichen addressed them, their brows furrowed. Since Di Beichen was already married to Bailey Hongzhuang, then there was something wrong with how he addressed them. I heard that you and Hongzhuang are already married? Mu Lingbing slowly asked. Di Beichen immediately understood why Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's expressions were so strange after he greeted them. Uncle, auntie, Hongzhuang and I got married in Fengbo country, but at that time, Hongzhuang and I got married because of a marriage contract from the emperor of Fengbo country. At that time, I married Hongzhuang as the emperor of Fengbo. After I got together with Hongzhuang, I decided to wait for the two of you to come before marrying Hongzhuang in a grand manner, with my current identity. Di Beichen's eyes were clear and his voice sincere. This had always been his idea. He wanted to marry Bailey Hongzhuang in a grand manner with the blessings of his parents. He didn't want Hongzhuang to have any regrets. Because Hongzhuang was the love of his life. Everything he did was for Hongzhuang to live a better life. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were also slightly moved, their hearts filled with excitement. They had already heard from Bailey Hongzhuang that Di Beichen had become the emperor of Fengbo because he had been persecuted. In that case, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's identities in Fengbo weren't their true identities. Mu Lingbing's heart skipped a beat. If she could personally send her daughter off, that would be her wish. But before that, I hope to obtain uncle's and aunt's approval, so that you can be at ease in marrying Hongzhuang to me. Di Beichen's smile was sincere and handsome. It was full of sincerity without the slightest hint of hypocrisy or perfunctoriness. Bailey Hongzhuang was a rare treasure in his heart. He also knew what it meant to obtain Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's approval for Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing Di Beichen's earnest and sincere appearance, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other. Originally, they wanted to inquire about Di Beichen's background and find out if he had any bad history. However, after seeing Di Beichen's sincere appearance, the original questions could no longer continue to be asked. Chapter 2077. After all these years of experience, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had a certain degree of accuracy in judging people. Just from Di Beichen's performance, they could already see Di Beichen's sincerity towards Yixuan. In truth, they weren't dissatisfied with Di Beichen before, because Di Beichen was willing to risk his life to save them with Yixuan. Just this point alone was enough to prove his sincerity. Father, mother, It was only after Beichen discovered my jade pendant that I learned of my true identity. If not for that, I'm afraid I still wouldn't know. Moreover, it was he who took care of me all these years and helped me inquire about you. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle. She had seen all that Di Beichen had done for her. How could Di Beichen let her down? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing smiled when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang speaking up for Di Beichen. It looked like their daughter had steeled her heart to be with Di Beichen. Yixuan is my precious daughter. If you dare bully her, I definitely won't forgive you. Mu Lingbing continued. In the past, she and Lan Yunxiao weren't here, so she didn't know if Yixuan had suffered any grievances. But now that they were here, they definitely wouldn't let Yixuan suffer any more grievances. Aunt, don't worry. As long as I'm here, I won't let Hongzhuang suffer. Di Beichen's voice was serious, each word like an oath. To him, if anyone dared to bully Hongzhuang, he wouldn't rest until the other party was dead. Hearing Di Beichen's reply, Mu Lingbing nodded and relaxed. Then, she suddenly recalled Di Beichen's words and couldn't help asking. Beichen, you said you used to be the Prince of Fengbo. Then what is your current identity? Speaking of which, ever since they were rescued by Hongzhuang, they had been staying in the room and didn't know where they were. Because they had never left the room and only saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the three contracted beasts, they didn't ask too much. However, after hearing Di Beichen's words, she felt that Di Beichen's true identity wasn't simple. According to Yixuan, Di Beichen had only become the Prince of Fengbo after being persecuted. After being persecuted, he became a prince. This was enough to prove that Di Beichen's previous status was very high. One had to know that in the mortal world, a prince of a small dynasty was an identity that many people envied. Of course, such a status wasn't much to them. As Mu Lingbing's voice fell, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at each other, their expressions somewhat complicated. Even now, they still hadn't introduced Situ Yen to Mu Lingbing. To tell the truth, they were conflicted and didn't know when to do so. Now that Mu Lingbing asked this question, it wouldn't be appropriate if they didn't know how to fight. After thinking for a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded at Di Beichen. Over the past few days, she had been looking for an opportunity to sound Mu Lingbing out. However, she hadn't found a suitable opportunity. Chapter 2078. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing also noticed Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's small movements and couldn't help feeling curious. Could it be that Di Beichen's identity was very mysterious? Otherwise, why would they hesitate when talking about this matter? In an instant, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's hearts sank. If Di Beichen's identity was someone hiding in the shadows, it wouldn't be good for Yixian. However, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were stunned when they heard Di Beichen's next words. I am the young sect master of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen slowly said. When Di Beichen said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but observe Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's expressions. They didn't know if Mu Lingbing knew of her relationship with Situ Yen. If she did, Mu Lingbing would be shocked to hear the news. Even if she didn't know, they would tell Mu Lingbing the news today. Tiangang sect was a renowned sect in the Shengxian continent. Countless cultivators racked their brains to enter it. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen's identity was naturally incomparably honorable. If it was before, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao wouldn't have found it strange when they heard the name Tiangang sect. On the contrary, with Di Beichen's honorable status and his wholehearted devotion to Yixian, they were most at ease. Tiangang sect was famous for being upright. Once Lan Yixuan became the wife of the young sect master of Tiangang sect, her identity would also be incomparably honorable. However, they had learned of the relationship between Mu Lingbing and the sect master of Tiangang sect from Wuxia. Thinking back, they had been extremely shocked when they first heard the news. They had even thought that everything Wuxia had said was false, and that she was probably just toying with them. However, thinking about it carefully, there was no need for Wuxia to tease them. Back then, Wuxia had already told them that the reason they were being targeted and tortured was because of Mu Lingbing's parents. However, Wuxia had never revealed the identity of her parents to Mu Lingbing. It was only when Si Tu-yen had gone to the Yu clan that Yu Siqing had angrily spilled the beans. Mu Lingbing had also remembered Si Tu-yan's name. Ever since she was young, she had always thought that she was an orphan. Only her master took pity on her and raised her into an adult. Ever since she married Lan Yunxiao, she didn't even have the chance to return to the Sun Moon Palace before falling into such a state. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing never imagined that things would be so coincidental. Back then, they had left Yishuan and Fengbo, but now Yishuan was together with the young sect master of Heavenly Dipper sect. Perhaps all of this was predestined. They were destined to meet Si Tu-yen. Mu Lingbing had hated her own father when she was a child. She couldn't understand why her parents had abandoned her. Right now, her feelings were extremely complicated. The changes in Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's expressions didn't escape Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes. They immediately discovered the crux of the problem. From the looks of it, Mu Lingbing and the others knew about Si Tu-yen. Bailey Hongzhuang was inwardly astonished. Grandfather didn't acknowledge Mu Lingbing because he didn't know. If Mu Lingbing already knew, then why didn't she acknowledge grandfather? Chapter 2079. Father, Mother, you've heard of Tiangang sect, right? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Lan Yunxiao nodded. Tiangang sect is a transcendent sect. Of course we know. Actually, we're in Tiangang sect right now. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to speak. Since she had already spoken up to this point, it would be better for her to explain everything clearly. Mu Lingbing was someone who had weathered many storms. Even if this news had a certain impact on her, she believed that Mu Lingbing would be able to bear it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing both froze for a moment. They obviously didn't expect such a result. They had always lived in the house and had never stepped out. They had never imagined that they would be in Tiangang sect. Mother, to tell you the truth, I've already acknowledged grandfather. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like a heavy bomb that exploded in Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's hearts. When they first learned about this from Yu Siqing, they felt extremely conflicted. They hadn't expected that Lan Yishuan would be the first to acknowledge Si Tu-yen. Father, Mother, did you already know about grandfather's identity? Actually, grandfather went with you when we went to save you, but he was worried that Mother wouldn't want to see him, so he never appeared in front of you. Grandfather was deceived by Yu Siqing back then. He's actually been searching for grandmother all these years. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was low. She could understand Mu Lingbing's feelings when she heard this. Just like when she first found out about her own identity, her feelings were extremely complicated. But in the end, she chose to accept it. Moreover, grandfather didn't want what happened to him back then. All these years, he was relying on his own stubbornness to search for grandmother. This was already a huge punishment. As long as all these misunderstandings were cleared up, this wouldn't happen again. But grandmother didn't give grandfather a chance. He also went to Yutian City. Mu Lingbing's eyes widened in disbelief. She had clearly heard Yu Siqing say that she had deceived Si Tu-yen, and that Si Tu-yen didn't know that she was her daughter. She had never thought that Si Tu-yen would be involved in the rescue this time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Grandfather went with us. That's why we're so confident that we can save all of you. After receiving Bailey Hongzhuang's confirmation, Mu Lingbing's expression changed slightly as a warm feeling rose in her heart. Originally, she thought that she was a child without a father or mother. She didn't expect that everything was not like that at all. Her father had always been looking for her, and her mother had always kept her by her side. It was just that she had never known about it. Mother, did you know grandfather's identity long ago but never acknowledged him? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. Lan Yunxiao saw that Mu Lingbing was still immersed in her emotions, so he took the initiative to tell Bailey Hongzhuang. Your mother didn't know before, but Yu Siqing told us everything a few days ago. It was said that at that time, sect leader Situ went to the Yu clan to ask about your mother's identity. This matter seemed to have given Yu Siqing a huge shock, so Yu Siqing went to look for us and told us a lot. It was only then that your mother and I found out. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen exchanged glances and immediately understood. Chapter 2080. It looked like Yusiching was still brooding over what had happened in the past. That was why she had been so agitated when Situ Yen had gone to find her. Father, did Yusiching say that grandfather and grandmother were separated because of a misunderstanding caused by her? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. It would take some time for Mu Lingbing to accept her past, but if she knew that it was all a misunderstanding, it would be much easier for her to accept it. Lan Yunxiao nodded. Yusiching clearly thought that we would never be able to leave in this lifetime, so she didn't hide anything when she talked about it. As soon as this was said, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both breathed a sigh of relief. Yusiching was truly abominable, but they hadn't expected her to help them. With Yusiching's testimony, everything that Situ Yen had said was true without a doubt. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Actually, grandfather hasn't given up on searching all these years, but he hasn't been able to find grandmother. I was only able to reunite with grandfather by chance, and it's all thanks to mother's name. My name? Mu Lingbing's gaze focused on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, her eyes filled with doubt and confusion. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. When grandfather and grandmother were together, they had already thought of your name. When grandfather heard your name, he immediately connected the dots. Adding on my identity, it all came together. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's words were simple, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were both smart people. So after thinking about it carefully, they understood everything. So that's how it is. Mu Lingbing slowly clenched her fists under her sleeves, as she did her best to control her emotions. She had never thought that her name was the result of her parents' agreement. However, she had always thought that she had been abandoned by her parents. At this moment, all of her previous hatred and pain had vanished into thin air. Whether it was Situ Yen or Mu Jin's situation, she could understand. Based on their standpoint, that was probably the best outcome. This was all because of Yusiching. If it wasn't for Yusiching, how could their family have endured so much pain? Bailey Hongzhuang held Mu Lingbing's hand and said, Mother, grandfather has been in great pain all these years. When he first found out that you had woken up, he was also very excited. I could tell that Grandpa really wanted to reunite with you, but he was worried that you wouldn't accept him. Actually, we all know that Grandpa didn't do anything wrong back then. He was just deceived. Mother, if you can understand, why don't you acknowledge Grandfather? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mu Lingbing. If Mu Lingbing could reunite with Situ Yen, then their family would be reunited. All that was left was her grandmother, and then their family would be completely reunited. Mu Lingbing looked into Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, her right hand slowly resting on Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Yixuan, mother hasn't done anything for you since you were young, and even made you suffer so much pain. However, you've never blamed me, so what right do I have to blame him? Mu Lingbing's smile faded. The person she owed the most in this life was Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2081. This was what Mu Lingbing was most grateful for. In the past, when she saw Lan Qingyan's attitude towards Yu Manlan, she had thought about it. If she really had the chance to see her daughter in the future, if Yi Xian criticized her like Lan Qingyan, would she be able to bear it? Without a doubt, she wouldn't be able to bear it. However, ever since she met Lan Yixuan, Yi Xian had never complained in the slightest. On the contrary, Yi Xian was so concerned about them that she could feel Yi Xian's deep feelings for them. To her, this was the greatest gift from the heavens. She had lived with a guilty heart for so many years, but her daughter was a true angel. If she and Lan Yunxiao were parents, Yi Xian could accept it. But what reason did she have to not accept a father like Situ Yen? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen heard Mu Lingbing's words, they couldn't help but sigh in relief. It seemed like their previous worries were unnecessary. Mu Lingbing was a reasonable person, and had already seen through all of this. Mother, you're the best. Grandfather will definitely be very happy. Bailey Hongzhuang hugged Mu Lingbing tightly, her face full of joy. Since Mu Lingbing had accepted it, their family was getting closer and closer to reuniting. Mu Lingbing hugged Bailey Hongzhuang back, her smile full of happiness. Now, she really felt that all the bitterness was over, and the sweetness was about to begin. Ever since they left the Yu family, Everything had changed for the better. Yi Xian, I think it's better to wait until my poison is completely removed before meeting him. In my current state, it's still not suitable. Mu Lingbing thought for a moment, before speaking in a low voice. Although she was much better than before, she still looked sickly. She had lived for so long, but she had never seen her father before. Now that she finally had the chance to see him, she naturally wanted to present her best side. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang understood Mu Lingbing's thoughts and nodded with a smile. All right. Lan Yunxiao dotingly looked at Mu Lingbing. As Mu Lingbing's closest person, he naturally knew what she was thinking. In the past, Mu Lingbing had been brooding over her birth. Now that everything had been resolved, he was truly happy for Mu Lingbing. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three talked about a lot of things that had happened in the past few years, and how Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had met. Mu Lingbing was obviously very interested in Bailey Hongzhuang and wanted to know everything about Bailey Hongzhuang. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang did not hide anything and spoke of her experiences over the years. When Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing found out how Bailey Hongzhuang had grown from the young miss of Fengbo's general's estate to her current status, their hearts were filled with shock. Originally, they thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's path had been very smooth. They never expected it to be a path filled with thorns. Situ Yan's reunion with Bailey Hongzhuang had only happened after she had worked hard to reach her current status. After learning about her experiences, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang went beyond admiration. After all the hardships that Bailey Hongzhuang had experienced over the years, her inner strength had shaken them to their core. However, they felt even more pride. Chapter 2082. As Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's health improved bit by bit, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood completely turned for the better. She felt as if the burden on her shoulders had been lightened by a lot. Although she hadn't gotten her revenge, at least her parents' lives were no longer in danger. Their family was reunited. This was the most joyous thing. After knowing Mu Lingbing's attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching told Situyan about this matter. Situyan was extremely happy when he learned that Mu Lingbing was willing to forgive him. At least, the problem he had been worried about didn't happen. After knowing the truth, Situyan felt extremely guilty, afraid that Mu Lingbing wouldn't forgive him. Fortunately, neither Mu Lingbing nor Bailey Hongzhuang cared too much about this matter. At the same time, the news of the alchemist test gradually spread throughout Tiangang sect. The triennial alchemist test attracted the attention of Tiangang sect's disciples, especially those from the alchemy hall. They were curious as to what kind of junior brothers and sisters would come this time. Of course, most people were interested in the existence of their junior sisters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.